SCHD is one of the most popular ETFs in America, nearly $100 billion sitting in it right now. And I get why. Reliable dividends, strong companies, a track record that speaks for itself. But if SCHD is sitting in your taxable brokerage account, and for a lot of you it is, it's quietly costing you about $1,000 a year in taxes you never needed to pay. And here's the part that surprises people. The problem isn't the tax rate. SCHD's dividends are qualified. That means they're taxed at 15% for most people, sometimes even 0. That's the best rate you can get on investment income. So if the rate is good, what's the problem? The problem is the volume. SCHD yields about 3.2%. On a $300,000 position, that's roughly $9,600 a year in dividends landing in your account, whether you want them or not. Even if you reinvest every single penny, the IRS still taxes you on every dollar of it. Now compare that to VOO, the Vanguard S&P 500 fund. VOO only yields about 1.1%. On the same $300,000, that's about $3,300 in dividends. SCHD is forcing roughly $6,300 more in taxable income every year. At a 15% qualified dividend rate, that's about $950 in extra taxes every single year, just for holding SCHD in the wrong account. Scale it up to $500,000, and the gap jumps to over $1,600 a year. Add the 3.8% net investment income tax for higher earners, and it gets even wider. Before I show you the fix, I want you to think about something. Do you believe SCHD belongs in a taxable account or not? Hold that answer. By the end of this video, you'll know 5 ETFs that do the same job as SCHD in your taxable brokerage with a fraction of the tax cost. And you'll know exactly where SCHD actually belongs. Because here's the thing, SCHD isn't a bad ETF. It might be one of the best dividend funds ever created. It's just a great fund sitting in the wrong seat. And I'll prove it with the math. The tax drag you can't see. Let me explain why this matters so much more than people realize. In a Roth IRA, your money grows tax-free. Dividends, gains, nothing gets taxed, ever. In a traditional IRA or 401k, taxes are deferred until you withdraw. But in a taxable brokerage account, the IRS shows up every single year. Now, here's the part most people miss. Every dollar you pay in taxes on a forced dividend is a dollar that stops compounding. It's gone. It's out of your portfolio and it never comes back. In a low-yield fund, almost all your returns come from the stock price going up, and you own not a single penny on that growth until you choose to sell. Maybe that's 10 years from now, maybe 20, maybe never, because if you pass those shares to your heirs, they get what's called a step-up in basis. That entire unrealized gain, the tax bill disappears completely. Think about that. With SCHD, you're forced to pay taxes every year, no matter what. With a low-yield index fund, you get to decide when, or if, you ever pay. So this isn't just about $1,000 this year. It's about $1,000 that would have been compounding for 20 or 30 more years. Run the numbers, and that gap can reach $30,000 or more in lost wealth over a lifetime. Now, I need to bust a myth I see all over the internet, because this confusion is costing people real money. Here's the myth. SCHD's dividends get taxed at your regular income rate, 22%, 24%, maybe even 37%. So people think holding SCHD anywhere is a tax disaster. Here's the truth. SCHD's dividends are almost entirely qualified, roughly 95 to 100%. They're taxed at the long-term capital gains rate. For most people, that's 15%, not your ordinary income rate, 15%. And SCHD has never distributed a taxable capital gain since it launched in 2011, not once. The ETF structure protects it. So the rate is actually fine. That's the part people get wrong. But here's what they also miss. A good tax rate doesn't fix the volume problem. SCHD still forces more than 3 times the taxable income of a basic index fund. Every dollar of that income gets taxed now, not later, not on your terms.
The rate is fine, the forced income is the killer. Once you see it that way, the fix is obvious. 5 smarter ETFs for your taxable account. Here are 5 ETFs built specifically to cut your tax drag in a taxable brokerage. Each one keeps your portfolio strong while keeping the IRS quiet. Number 1. VOO. If you only hold one ETF in your taxable account for the rest of your life, make it this one. VOO is Vanguard's S&P 500 fund, the 500 biggest companies in America. Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Amazon, all of them. Expense ratio of just 0.03%. That's $3 a year on every $10,000 invested. The dividend yield is only about 1.1%, and the big one, VOO has never distributed a capital gain since it launched, 0. Almost all your returns come from the price going up, and you don't owe taxes on that until you sell. If you want broader coverage, VTI tracks the entire U.S. market, about 4,000 companies, same 0.03% fee. And if you want the cheapest S&P 500 ETF on the market, there's SPYM. It tracks the same index as VOO for just 0.02%. You might know it by its old name, SPLG. They changed the ticker in late 2025. Number 2. VTV. This is the one most people don't know about, and it might be the most important name on this list, because VTV is the closest thing to a direct SCHD replacement in a taxable account. VTV is the Vanguard Value ETF. It holds the same type of companies SCHD does, large, profitable, dividend-paying blue chips, but with 2 massive advantages. First, the yield. VTV pays about 1.9% versus SCHD's 3.2%. On a $500,000 portfolio, that's roughly $6,500 less in forced taxable income every year. At a 15% qualified rate, you keep about $975 a year that SCHD would have handed to the IRS. Second, diversification and stability. VTV holds 311 companies versus SCHD's 100. It charges half the fee, 0.03% versus 0.06%, and its annual portfolio turnover is around 8%. SCHD's 31% this year. SCHD just went through its biggest reconstitution ever back in March 2026. 25 stocks added, 22 removed. Lower turnover means fewer moving parts and fewer surprises inside the fund. Now, I want to be straight with you here. In 2026 so far, SCHD has actually outperformed VTV. That's a reversal from the last couple of years when VTV was ahead. But over 10 years, they're nearly identical, both around 12.5% per year. The point is not that VTV always beats SCHD. The point is that VTV gives you similar long-term returns while forcing far less taxable income through the door. Same destination, lower tax toll along the way. Quick question before we keep going. Do you own SCHD, VTV, or both right now? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and I'm genuinely curious what your portfolio actually looks like. Number 3. SCHG. Growth ETFs are hands down the most tax-friendly stock funds you can own. And the reason is simple. Growth companies reinvest their profits back into the business instead of paying them out, so your returns come almost entirely from the stock price going up. You don't owe taxes on that until you sell. SCHG, Schwab's U.S. Large Cap Growth ETF, yields just 0.4%. On a $500,000 portfolio, that's about $2,000 in dividends. Compare that to $16,000 from SCHD. Big difference. Expense ratio is just 0.04%. Vanguard's version is VUG, same fee, similar returns. And here's a bonus that smart taxable account investors use. SCHG and VUG track different indexes, so if one of them drops in value, you can sell it, take the tax loss, and immediately buy the other one without triggering a wash sale violation. That's called tax loss harvesting, and it's one of the biggest legal advantages of owning ETFs in a taxable account. Number 4. VXUS. This is the one people get backwards. Most investors put their international fund inside their IRA. The logic makes sense on the surface. Most investors put their international fund inside their IRA. The logic makes sense on the surface. International ETFs pay higher dividends, so you'd want to shelter them, right? Actually, it's the opposite. The reason is the foreign tax credit. When VXUS, the Vanguard Total International Stock ETF, holds companies in Germany, Japan, Taiwan, and dozens of other countries, those foreign governments withhold a piece of the dividends before you ever see them. But here's the key. If VXUS sits in your taxable account, the IRS lets you claim that money back on your U.S. tax return. That's worth roughly $200 to $250 for every $100,000 you have invested. If VXUS is inside your IRA, that credit vanishes. You can never get it back. VXUS gives you exposure to over 8,700 companies across the world for just a 0.05% expense ratio. And in 2026, international stocks are actually ahead. VXUS is up over 13% year-to-date compared to about 11% for the S&P 500. Global diversification isn't just smart for your tax bill. Right now, it's also paying off. Number 5. VTEB. If you need any bond exposure in your taxable account, this is the answer. VTEB is the Vanguard tax-exempt bond ETF. It holds about 10,000 municipal bonds, and the interest is completely exempt from federal income tax. The yield is about 3.5%, but because it's tax-free, you have to think about it differently. If you're in the 24% bracket, you'd need a taxable bond fund paying about 4.6% just to match what VTEB gives you after taxes. Expense ratio is just 0.03%. This matters because regular bond funds pay interest that's taxed as ordinary income, up to 37%. VTEB skips that entirely. For anyone approaching or in retirement who needs some stability in their taxable account, that's a significant edge. Where SCHD actually belongs. Now here's the part that most videos about SCHD completely miss. I am not telling you to sell SCHD. I actually think it's an excellent fund. The question isn't whether to own it. The question is where it lives. SCHD belongs in your Roth IRA. Full stop. Inside a Roth, those 3.2% dividends grow completely tax-free. Every penny compounds without the IRS taking a cut. No annual tax drag, no forced income on your 1099. And when you withdraw in retirement, you pay zero. The very thing that makes SCHD expensive in a taxable account, the high dividend yield, becomes completely invisible inside a Roth. There's no tax to pay, so the yield becomes pure upside. A traditional IRA or 401k works too. Taxes are deferred until withdrawal. This concept has a name. It's called asset location, not asset allocation. That's what you own. Asset location is where you put it. Tax-efficient funds go in your taxable brokerage, index ETFs like VOO, growth funds like SCHG, international ETFs like VXUS for the foreign tax credit, and municipal bonds like VTEB. Tax-inefficient funds go in your IRA or 401k, high-dividend ETFs like SCHD, taxable bond funds, REITs, and actively managed funds with high turnover. Most people never think about this. They buy the same funds in every account and assume it doesn't matter. It matters more than almost anything else you can do. Write this down. It's not just what you invest in, it's where you put it. If someone you care about manages their own investments, share this part with them right now. Because according to Vanguard's research, getting asset location right can add up to 0.30% per year in after-tax returns. That might sound small, but over 30 years, that could mean up to $74,000 less paid in taxes. Real money. Now, one last thing, and this matters for fairness. If your total taxable income falls below about $49,000 as a single filer or $99,000 married filing jointly, your qualified dividend tax rate is 0%. Zero. At that income level, SCHD in a taxable account costs you nothing in federal dividend taxes. Everything I just showed you matters most for people above those thresholds. Know your bracket before you make a move. If someone you know owns SCHD in a taxable brokerage account, send them this video right now. It could save them thousands over time.
And tell me in the comments, what's the one ETF sitting in your taxable brokerage right now? After watching this, are you thinking about making any changes? I read every single one. If you're building income from your investments and want to stay ahead of tax strategies like this, subscribe to this channel. There's a lot more coming.